Hi, welcome back to Just Vetting, where we go beyond the exam room to talk business, leadership, and long-term success in veterinary medicine. I'm joined today with my friend, Dr. Kelly Cooper. Look forward to having a conversation with her. Kelly, good to see you.
Hi, Peter. It's fantastic to be here this morning. Oh, I say this morning, today.
Today.
For me, it's the morning. For you, it's what?
Yeah,
late in the afternoon.
Yes, it feels like the morning still, unfortunately, but it is late in the afternoon. Kelly, my guest, she's makes me feel a little inadequate. She's an established a practicing veterinarian, former independent practice owner, former corporate executive, founder of Reality Vet Coaching and Consulting, which we're going to get into. Author, jack of all trades. I don't know if there's something you haven't done yet, Kelly. We'll talk about.
I haven't been a lawyer yet, Peter. I haven't done that.
Stay away from that. I try to tell people to stay away. So Kelly, just jumping right into it. Before we hit go on the podcast, Kelly and I were just kicking around a recent client experience I had this morning about what we're seeing a lot. Young veterinarian, relatively new out of veterinary school, looking to buy a practice. I think Kelly used the word moxie, but at the same time, somebody, the client doesn't really know anything what they're doing, but they're like, hey, I'm going to go do this. And then Kelly told me, she actually did that and did the same thing. So Kelly, tell me a little bit about that. What you did, your experience.
Yeah, totally. I did that myself, Peter. So I did it. And this is the lesson of when you don't know what you don't know and you do it anyway. And I was 1 year out of school and I was working at a practice in New Mexico. And I hadn't intended to go there to buy a practice, but I liked the town, I liked the community. I saw a huge amount of opportunity in the practice, and because it had been, the owner was 75 years old, had been trying to sell it for a long time. It was a rural practice, and it fit the lifestyle I wanted. So I was like, sure, why not? I'll buy your practice. Right. I didn't know anything, Peter. I didn't know how to treat people. I didn't know anything about business. I didn't have any money. I had to figure out all the financing, but I did it anyway. Mm-hmm. And so what I love about what's happening in the industry is I see a surge, I don't know if it's maybe not a resurgence, right? But because now the majority is women, I think, that are buying these practices up. They have kids, they're still kind of early-ish career, maybe like early to mid. And they're taking these big, leaps of faith to go do their own thing, which I love. I just love that. I think it is moxie, right?
Right.
And they're going to figure it out because they're smart and they're capable and they will jump in and they do it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that, and I completely agree with everything you just said. I do feel that it's more of a resurgence. We're getting a lot more calls for clients who either want to start up their own practice or they're going to go buy a practice, where I'd say 2, 3, 4 years ago, you didn't see that independent streak as much. I think as the corporate buyers came in and people were selling their practices and they're hiring all the different doctors, and I think there's still a market for that, for the right person. But a lot of people want to, do their, like a client we spoke with today. She wants to do her own thing, very similar to your story. And it's almost like you guys, you had a cheat sheet in front of you, because she said almost the same thing. And I said to Kelly, I go, we're on a call. Like, maybe one of the differences back when you did it, you're talking to maybe your lawyer on a conference call. Now everybody wants to do video calls, and I'm literally doing a video call with her, and she's chasing her 2 young kids around in like a gymnasium, and she's telling me what she wants to do with the practice, which is not an unusual, because a lot of our clients are doing 2 or 3 things at once while they're still talking with us, which is completely fine. So
well, Peter, I just I love that you think I had a lawyer.
Oh, no lawyer. Okay, even better.
Because I didn't even have a lawyer, right? Yes. Like, I was so green.
Right.
And I had an uncle who was very business savvy, like really, really. He's like, He's like, no, she's too green, which of course just made me want to do it more. But I didn't even have the sense to get good help, like I just kind of like, hey, let's just do that thing. So at least this client of yours, she's so far ahead of the curve. Like she's like, I'm going to get me a good lawyer.
Well, one of the other things I think has changed is, I've been doing this probably close to almost over 15 years now. The team that people put around them now, they do value,
Yes.
a good practice consultant, a good lender who knows the space, a good CPA, a good lawyer, a financial advisor. And you and I both know through Vet Partners, there are a lot of good professionals that a business owner who's also a practice owner can surround themselves with so they can 100%. Enjoy, if that's the word, right? Yeah. Word, practicing veterinary medicine, right?
100%. And I love that there is more of a savviness in recognizing you can't DIY this whole thing. I mean, I guess you can, DIY this whole thing and be your own lawyer and be your own accountant. However, the hat that you need to wear as a practice owner is you got to be the doctor and you got to run the business and you're trying to do all these other things and it's not sustainable. Right. And that's why I do what I do, Peter. Half the time I'm working with my clients, I'm sending them to other experts and getting them to like, stop doing this yourself. Right. Like your mom shouldn't be doing your payroll anymore. Like you're $1 million practice. Like let's get you a bookkeeper. Let's get you an accountant. Let's get you advisors and lawyers because you're going to feel so much more confident and you're going to be so better prepared and you get to do what you love to do instead of trying to figure all this other stuff out. So I find when I meet, potential clients is they have some of it already, which is fantastic because they're already keyed in to using expertise. And then we just build from there.
What going back to when you bought that practice, can you think of anything, that was, I can't get over what you said, you're out of school a year and you're like, hey, I'm going to go buy a business. There's a lot of hats that you got to wear as a business owner, right? 100%. What's something that you learned? Or do you think of anything or things that you learned that you kind of carry forward today, in what you're currently doing?
Yeah. How long is this podcast again?
Yeah, right. Long as you want. That's it. That's it.
So many lessons. Well, when I tell this story, I say, I would not recommend this path to anybody, really. I mean, yes, I learned, I figured it out. It was also a long, slow, and sometimes really painful process. Right. Because, I come out of vet school, I buy this practice, and I don't know how to lead a team. I don't know how to budget my finances. There's so many things I don't have, and I'm isolated and alone, right? Yeah. And that's common in our profession is our practices and our practice owners get into these little islands and they live off on their own, pretty isolated from community, and they don't know how to ask for help. They don't know what help they need. They just what's the word? They persevere, they push through, they work harder, but they're burnt out. They're frustrated. They're isolated. And I live that life, Peter. So if I were to give you like, what was my big one takeaway is after living that life and then going into a corporate practice world where I was surrounded by expertise, community, and a team, what I realized that was the thing I was missing the most is had I gathered those things around me, a community that understood what I was going through and could support me, experts that could be like, oh, do it this way. We can knock it out in a heartbeat. If I had a do-over, Peter, that's what I do differently more than anything.
Do you think maybe somebody coming out of school, they'd be better off associating in a practice so they could understand how a team works? Or, I mean, what, as opposed to just coming out and to get that experience?
Well, my first year, the practice I went to, so the owner was 75 years old and he had macular degeneration. Right. So a month after I arrived at his practice, he retired. So he was out, he moved off, and now I am running his practice 1 year out of school and trying to figure out medicine, trying to figure out how to lead this team. That's not my team. Excuse me. And then I'm like, well, I might as well buy it, right? Here I am. I'm doing it anyway.
Oh, why not?
So in hindsight, like, should someone be an associate? I think absolutely. I mean, some people just want to go out and try it. Sure.
Yeah.
And there's the VBMA, and there's different ways to prepare for leadership, right? And business ownership. And I've met a lot of students that are very geared that way and very savvy and know what they want. But that first year in practice, like with someone around you to help you figure out how to be a doctor and how to even just work with a team, how to delegate, how to, how to recognize people. Like it teaches you a lot about what you want, but more importantly, it also teaches you about what you don't want.
Right.
You're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to be that kind of leader. I don't want that kind of business. So I think it's definitely a perspective builder. And just, I mean, mine, I just kind of jumped into it all by myself. I mean, I had some mentors out there that kind of, would rescue me and help. However, again, this was not the path I would recommend for others.
Right.
And, taking a minute to just find out what's out there. What do you want? What do you not want? What kind of business do you want? Right? There's so many business models today in practice. We used to have like one type of practice.
Right.
Well, now there's like 6, 7 different types of practice models you can have. And so, yeah, I think that'd be very, very wise.
How long did you own the practice until you then made the decision to, transition to corporate leadership?
Yeah. Well, I owned it. I was there for 16 years total, and I owned it for 15 of those 16 years. Yeah.
Okay. And then what, I guess, so you're owner of 15, 16 years you're there. I guess, what made you pivot and go in a different direction?
Yeah. Well, when I thought I would be that James Herriot small town vet for my entire life. And then I would sell it when I was ready to retire and ride off into the sunset. And what happened to me in that transition, Peter, was I love medicine. I love practicing. I love learning. But I had to learn all those leadership lessons, right? There are times I went through I was such a terrible boss. I went through so many people, and I had to learn the hard way, right? Is when your team doesn't show up one day, and that's on you. Like, okay, I got to change this. So that 15 years for me was spent learning self-awareness, emotional intelligence, leadership development, how to create a team that loves to work with you and loves to work with each other. So and I went from that terrible boss nobody wanted to work with to, at the end, I would call it a level 5 tribe, right? A team that we all like to show up to work, and they hardly needed me, which to me, that's leadership magic, right? Is I could walk away. I mean, yeah, I had to be the doctor, but even if I went on vacation, I knew it was in great hands because I had this amazing team. I had all the technicians that lived in my county worked for me, like the vet techs, and we just loved what we did, and we grew, and we brought so many people to us from hundreds of 100 miles. People would come to see us, so it was this amazing thing. And then the recession came, and that was hard because I lived in a oil and gas predominant industry. It was oil and gas and ranching, and that was it. And so when the recession hit us, I lost a huge amount of my revenue in 1 year. And we had to scale back significantly, which was pretty painful, survive it. And after a couple of years of that, I was like, this is okay. However, what I love now is developing people, helping them going from finding a job to having a career, and helping them be their best selves. So I started, and my reps would come through, like my pharmaceutical reps would be like, "Why are you here? Like, what are you doing in this town?" Because I was maxing every best practice that I could in leadership and in business management. And I had a good friend that worked at Novartis at the time. We don't have Novartis anymore, but she said, you need to get out to the big city and do other things. And so I started looking around, and Banfield was hiring at the time. So Banfield Pet Hospital was adding a ton to their field leadership. There was a position open in Oklahoma, which is where I'd gone to vet school. And it was like a district manager, right? A medical director that would coach and develop about 30 doctors and build teams. Like, this sounds like exactly what I would love to do. And so I did a little research, talked to some of my network that knew the company and what was going on. And then they said, yeah, try it, like give it a try. So I threw my resume in, and the recruiter, who you and I both know, Stacy Purcell.
Right.
Stacey was the recruiter, and she's like, oh, it'll take months, right? It's going to be a long time. And I said, well, it was hard for me to find references because I had the state inspector, my relief doctor. Like, I wasn't going to ask my competitors. But anyway, Banfield hired me in 1 month, Peter. In a month, they hired me. And so I had to figure out how to run my practice, like how to start a new job, how I was going to sell my practice in a very, very short window. I took a huge leap of faith into the corporate world.
Well, it's just like you did in the ownership world, another leap of faith, right?
I did. I know. This is how I make changes.
No rest for the weary, right?
No rest for the weary, for sure.
No, I wrote down, I love it. I know it's a very common saying, finding a job versus finding a career. And I told you earlier, I have 3 daughters in college, and 2 of them just went back today. And I think they're probably glad to get away from me because all the sayings that I keep talking to them, to them about, connecting and relationships and this and that. I think younger kids are so geared on, how much money am I going to make, or they have so much pressure of what their job is going to be. I said, you just got to get out there. Do your best, stay in school, and other things are going to fall into place. And you want to find a career, not just your job. I mean, to make 100%. Those Mondays after the holidays a lot easier to go back to for yourself. So
I feel very fortunate, that I have a profession that I wanted to do since I was a child. And even though there's been seasons where I didn't love it so much, or days I didn't love it so much, as a whole, I look forward to Mondays. I look forward to doing what I do. And it's taken a lot of turns I never expected it would, but it's just so much fun. And I know that not everybody gets that. I know some people, they can't find their spot, and for them, it's a job, right? It's a job, and it's a means to an end for them versus a really integrated part of their life.
But you think about it. So you love your job and you love what you do, but it wasn't an easy path to get there. And I think, and I hate to say it, I sound like an old fogey, what the younger generation, it's just like they want that easier path. So that's what they think they do. And neither you or I, you got to where you were. There was no, I hit a lot of roadblocks. There's a lot of things that I want, you swung and missed. And I love what you said about trying to be, the town's, veterinarian. I look forward to November comes around. Inevitably, I'm going to watch It's a Wonderful Life probably 10 times over the holiday season. And my kids will drive me crazy. They don't want to see it anymore. But I just love that old school, you're maybe being that one attorney in town or something. There's something, nostalgic about that for a lot of us.
Oh, yeah. Peter, I loved it in so many ways because, I had been, Rotary president, and I've been a, officer in the Chamber of Commerce.
Really involved in your community.
I was it's when the local sheriff finds a little horse wandering down Main Street, who are they going to call, right? And there's a house on fire. I got the fire chief, hey, Dr. Kelly, can you come? We got 10 cats in this house.
Oh my God!
They're out doing little cat CPR on the lawn.
Yeah,
there's some some small town stories that, and the community was a magical community. I had so many friends. Making that decision to leave was one of the hardest things I've done in my life. And I knew I had to do it, and I still have, I still connected to most of my clients. I went through, 16 years, you get to go through a lot of the whole cycle of those pets' lives,
right?
From losing one and going and getting that next new puppy or new kitten and just living that with them. That I think we've lost a lot in our profession. That relationship with your veterinarian in that way, that you've got they're just part of your family.
No doubt. I know. My veterinarian is 73. He did sell his practice 4 years ago, still practicing. And, I've told him, I go, once he leaves, I leave too, because he's, I haven't met anybody else in the practice. He's my guy. He calls me, texts my wife. We go to dinner. He's my friend. We're a friend. And I really enjoy my time with him, even outside. And I know he's got our dogs, he's my dog's back. You're right. I'm a big relationship guy, and there's a couple other people in the area that I know who are friends of mine. Once he's really done, I said to my wife, we're going over here. Because I want a relationship. That's just the way I'm geared. Sure. Anybody ideal. I don't like that transaction
Yeah.
type of feel. I want relationships with people you deal with.
This is a relationship business, right?
Yeah.
Veterinary medicine absolutely is a relationship business. And I, I've watched that transition from having that primary provider, you're going to get to see your doctor, to probably not, right? Like
Right.
if, and especially and I'm not anti-corporate practice at all,
No,
right?
right.
Like
I know. Yep.
I love corporate practice too. I
Yep.
mean, both sides have great pros and both
Depends
have
what you're looking
cons.
for. There's people who want to go on an app and just boop, 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 boop. They don't want that
Absolutely. Yeah.
relationship, so it works for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, it just, the bigger the practice, it can't, well, I mean, look at the human experience, right? How hard is it to get to your primary?
Yes.
I think veterinary medicine has gone that way quite a bit. So I guess from accessibility, quick visit, getting to somebody, good, but that relationship and that continuity of care is impacted.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something I'd love to see come back. I think it's coming back in human. Like my insurance company wants to make sure I see my primary on a pretty regular basis,
right,
which is a good thing, so hopefully veterinary medicine will find its way back into that.
It is tough. Listen, you're more optimistic than I am. I hope that is the case. I see it more on the veterinary side than on the human side, because my primary care physician, he's 57, he's a couple of years, like 2 years older than me. He has told me there's going to be a time when I won't be here anymore. You're going to see a nurse practitioner. He goes, just won't. And he goes, I don't even really. He doesn't even make a profit doing what he's doing. He said his lifestyle is supported through his family, where he can do. He's a small town doctor, and I love that about him. He's with my wife, my brother, my in-law. He sees everybody. Where my old physician, he'd come in, he was walking in the door with a clipboard. He had 2 feet out the door already, because it was just in and out the door, because he had to see everybody in those 10-minute increments. And you felt that. It just, you can tell. You can tell. So you're at Banfield, so you transitioned, and then, so how long were you at Banfield until you figured, okay, listen, again, I think I'm ready for another pivot. What made that change happen?
So I started at Banfield at the district role, so medical director with 14 hospitals, and I was in that position a little over 5 years, and in Oklahoma, so based out of Oklahoma City, and so I covered Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Fantastic job, right? I loved it. We had a lot of success. I had a business partner, and we worked together, to run our district. And then I was promoted to regional vice president. So I went to what was then called the Northwest region, which means my territory was everything north of Texas and west to the West Coast, except I didn't have California.
That's some territory, right?
So geographically, I won, but it was, and it was great. So I got to go to places. I had Seattle and Portland, and I ended up living here in Portland. Kansas City, Oklahoma City, Vegas was pretty fun, Salt Lake City, Denver. So I spent 40 weeks of my year on a plane.
Wow.
And I would, be home Mondays, pop on a plane on Tuesday, be home Thursday, spend the weekend back at home.
You obviously enjoyed you enjoyed what you were doing.
I liked it. I really enjoyed it. It was a good time. My daughter was kind of in her teens, and so not very needy, and it worked well for family timing. And my role then was really, just visit the hospital, support those district leaders, and make sure they had everything they needed to succeed. And then I went to the division vice president in the end of 2019. And so this was a national role where I had oversight of all the hospitals. So all the doctors basically rolled up to me. I reported to the chief medical officer. And so it was great. But so I started like December of 2019, and then 2020 came. And then we were just firefighting and reacting with the pandemic, right? Pandemic kicks in, all travel stops, everything's remote. So everything just changed in that. And I did that role for probably about a year and a half. And then I moved into actually the corporate headquarter role of vice president of veterinary affairs. So my role was overseeing project leadership, and we were doing things like veterinary technician utilization appointments. We were doing work in patient safety, hands-free radiology, telemedicine, like all these really big enterprise projects. And the work was great, and it was forward thinking. It was moving the industry along. When you get to work in a company as big as Mars,
right?
When you do things that impact an industry, and that really spoke to me. However, what I did struggle with is I'd lost my direct connection to the hospitals. Like, I was kind of so far removed in the work that I did. I didn't get out and see hospitals and see leaders and really work with those on the front lines, which is what I realized my heart is there. Like, that's what I love more than anything. And so I did it for a couple of years, and I was like, I'm just not, like, this doesn't feel like a fit for me. And I don't see the path that would. I couldn't go back. I didn't want to go back to traveling every week anymore,
right.
the operations. So I decided to resign. I decided it was time to like step away, find another path. So in 2022, I handed in my notice, and about a month later, I just kind of stopped, took a break for a month, and just took a breath, and I started Reality Vet coaching and consulting. And I also I went back to working in a practice and doing some relief work, and which I love, like going back. I had not actively practiced, Peter, in over 10 years, right? Like I would go in and pop into rooms and help, and I would coach on surgeries, but like being back in the trenches was quite another transition, like getting all the doses in my head again, and just the, kind of the flow of it. But it was so invigorating just to do that again. And I started Reality Vet with the goal of, if you think about the doctor I was, right? I got a practice out of school, tried to do it on my own, and suffered a lot of struggle and burn. I mean, I had a lot of wins, but it was a hard path. I help those owners now. So your client you talked about, she's like going to go jump into practice. She's got 2 kids. I'm not the startup person, so I'm not the one that's going to help her get started up. But about a year into practice ownership, she's going to be a bit overwhelmed. She's going to be like, oh my gosh, how do I do all this now that I'm in it and I'm managing my team and I've got my head up from the tactics of startup? That's when I come in. That's when I step in.
Right.
And my love is to help get them from that kind of stuck and overwhelmed moment of they don't know what they don't know, but they're working really hard and they're giving all they've got, to creating awareness to the communication skills, leadership skills, business skills that they need, and the support, right? The expertise and support that they need to move from that in the mix trenches of doing it all themselves to actually leading as like a CEO and going home on time, spending time with their family, like empowering the team around them to carry some of the load instead of constantly like directing and telling them, what needs to happen.
And you're so correct with that. And you and I were talking about that earlier, in terms of where I think maybe with this generation that's coming in now, they're more open to that help, if that's the word, assistance, guidance, where, maybe some of the more senior veterinarians, they were doing everything, kind of very much like what you did, but they did it, they just kept doing it until their 60s. The unfortunate thing is you put your heart, you had a great career, you got good practice, but a lot of those practices are antiquated and the value in them is not there. And it's a lot of that's where the retirement is too. And I look at them as diamonds in the rough. You find the right buyer and you can transition it to somebody like a younger veterinarian. They put their team around them, and hopefully they can kind of polish that diamond and bring it back to life. Because to your point, I think you said, to me earlier was, there is risk, but I don't think the fall is as large as maybe in some other areas outside of vet med, where if you buy a business, and it doesn't work out. I knock on wood. I think I've had one in the 15 years I've been doing this where financially it just went sideways on them.
Yeah,
it's very rare.
Yeah, it is very rare. And that's something I learned even from our vet partners colleagues, is that, the banks are very eager to loan to veterinarians because the default rate is so low. So I don't know what the climate is in this moment. You probably are closer to it than I am, but it's easy to start a practice, right? It's easy to go buy a practice, right? From a financial side, there's plenty of lenders who recognize that veterinarians are a pretty safe bet. And, and I mean, we've got degrees behind us. We're smart. So obviously we have discipline and we know how to push through, but it's then you've got it. I've talked to some people who've started practices who, they've got, I don't know, $7,000 a month lease, and, their payment on their loans is huge. And I said, who helped prepare you for this, right? Who helped you understand and project what you need to service these expenses and to service that debt? And they're just, they're a little lost, and that it surprises me. It's like, okay, how could we set them up better for success? And who can come in and quickly help them, ramp up and get what they need to not carry the stress of that.
Right. And as you and I both know, there's a lot of resources available to them. Myra, I don't know if, when looking back at the early part of your career, if you had the same type of resources available to you back then. It just seems like there's a lot of information available to them if they want it. Yeah. A lot of them seem to want it to be more successful.
Yeah, I don't know, Peter, because I think about who, I was reading veterinary economics, like that was my lifeline of knowledge, right? And it was, I was reading like Mark Opperman, right? Like Nonstop and everybody, all these other guys, right? Kind of these pioneers in this field, I would say. So were there as many resources available back in 1996? I don't know. I don't think so. I was, I was great. I hired a consultant at like I think it's about 3 years in, feeling like I was drowning. I hired a consulting group.
Right.
I did not work out well though. It was a huge investment. And the value I got out of it was like, here's our program. Good luck with it. Like, go get them. Right. And it was overwhelming. It was like so many things I had to change. I didn't know how to change them. And so I picked up a few good business skills, which was helpful, but I ended up paying like $20,000 in 1998, 99 to do that. It didn't, and to me, I wish it'd been different. I wish I'd had a different path. And I think now there's so many more different ways to get those skills, to get that leadership consulting, to get the expertise than there was, 25 years now. Vet Partners is about to be 25 years old, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
We're celebrating. So. Right. Yep.
So,
I guess you mentioned leadership a bunch throughout here. I guess for new practice owners, and you mentioned, they need to get the wind underneath their sails before maybe they bring somebody like you on board. But, they got to lead from day one at the, well, I guess what advice could you give to somebody, you either close on that practice that you're buying, or you're open the doors of a new startup. You have a staff, right? Mm-hmm. You got payroll to meet. I guess what is there any type of leadership advice or what you'd give to them or your clients?
So you're saying it's day one? So day one, they've
day one. I mean, listen, they can't. They got. I guess it's a trial by fire, a little bit of it as well too.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's interesting when you frame it that way, right? Is like, because they're a leader. Well, first of all, I want everybody to know, if you are a doctor or a technician, you wear a title, you're a leader, right? Mm-hmm. Even if you're an associate, you're a leader. Right. But when you put on the ownership hat, right? You put that on, you are under the microscope. Everything you are doing, your team is closely watching how you behave, and they expect you to show up as a competent leader from day one. You may not have any of those skills.
Right.
Right. Self-awareness, how to coach somebody, how to, empower and delegate, which is what everybody wants, that kind of boss. But sometimes you don't get that kind of boss. You get somebody who's just surviving through the day. So if I were to say it were a day one recommendation, I would don't try to carry it all on your own. Is bring the team you have in with you and be transparent and vulnerable. Say, okay, this is where we're at. This is what's working. This is what's not working. Mm-hmm. What do you all think about this? Because they're close to it too, right? They see it from a different lens than you as the owner see it. And get their opinions, get their perspective, get their buy-in, and then make the decision. Like, what do you do? And you ultimately the owner makes the decision, but there's so much power in leveraging the team around you who has an opinion. They have an opinion, they have a perspective, and they want to be heard. So if a simple thing, right? Very simple is here's a miss I feel like new practice owners have, or practice owners maybe all the time, is meeting with their team, right? One-on-ones with their team meetings on a regular basis, just sitting down and not just to do the laundry list of here's everything that's wrong that we need to go fix, but just breaking bread together and just be together and say, hey, let's solve a problem together. Like, how do we do this together? I think developing that, and that was one of my harder lessons to learn, is I thought because I was the owner, I was the doctor, I had taken on the responsibility that it was my responsibility to fix all the things and do all the things and not make their lives harder. I carried the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I see a lot of owners do that today.
Right.
They just carry it because they don't want to bother their team with another task. They don't want to, they just feel like
everybody's like
their responsibility.
Right.
Yeah. And so they just carry it. And it's like, hey, get help with that. Here's a simple example, Peter. I have a client, and it was the beginning of December, and I said, what are you guys doing for Christmas? Like, are you going to celebrate? She's like, oh yeah, no, well, we can't. And I said, well, why not? She says, well, we always say we're going to, but we don't. I said, well, why? She says, well, I just can't get to it. I was like, you can't get to it. What about your team? I bet they could get to it.
Right.
Have you asked them to help and just take it and do it and run with it? She's like, no. I was like, what if you did? How would that feel? She's like, but then that's more work for them. I said, yeah. I said, but I bet there's someone on your team who loves party planning, and, just ask them.
Right.
And she did it. And we talked a week later, boom, Christmas party was up. They were going to go bowling and they were going to do this.
Did you get an invite? Did you get an invite to the party?
I didn't. She's across the country, so I did not. But I said, look at that. Look at that. And she just hadn't really considered
simple mindset shift,
that
right?
She didn't have to do it, right? She just thought it was her job. And so, yeah, that simple advice, like what are the small things you can do, Peter, from the beginning, is realize you don't have to carry everything as the owner. Mm-hmm. You have a team around you who wants to help you. Just stop and ask, is this something you could help me with? Love it. Yep. And I find I have those conversations a lot with my clients that are overwhelmed and feel stuck and overburdened and burned out. I say, I want you to stop carrying all this and everything they bring up on their list. Like, who could do this for you? How do we help them do it? What do they need? Or can you just say, hey, all yours, go get them. I'll help you however I can. Right. You have a team around you. And maybe if you don't have enough people on a team, maybe that's a different issue where you got to go out and find somebody else, where it works. So Kelly, where can listeners learn more about you or connect with you? Reality Vet Coaching and Consulting is my business. And I am easy to find. So my email is drkellycooper@realityvet.com. And I am on LinkedIn. I'm actually doing a newsletter on LinkedIn. I'm having a lot of fun with. I release a little newsletter a couple times a week, and I'm doing just a little tiny, like it's a shift in mindset kind of moment is all that I'm doing. I like to talk about things like this, Peter. So like empowerment, delegating, recognizing that how you ask for help, how you carry the load, how you bring in your team, tiny shifts can have huge impact. So that's what I'm talking about in those. But so I'm very accessible through my website, and I love meeting anyone in this industry, and I love meeting someone who's stuck. If they don't know if they need a coach or need help, I'll have a conversation with them about that, right? It's like, where are you at? Where are you headed? What do you need? If I'm the right fit, that's fantastic. We explore it more. If I know a better fit, I connect them, to who they most need at that moment. But yeah, it's fantastic. I love helping this industry and helping our people. Well, you certainly have a significant amount of experience and, knowledge to share, which is great. And I love the fact that you want to share it, which is, makes professionals like myself who were fortunate enough to get involved in this industry, you feel welcomed and you feel part of it. And it really is, an enjoyable place to have a career and work with colleagues like yourself and our clients.
a lot of neat things that are going on. So
Oh,
it's very passionate about it. So, thank you for being a guest today. I really appreciate your
thank you
time.
for having
I
me.
look forward to seeing you in person soon. And to our listeners, thank you for listening again to Just Vetting. And if you find this episode was helpful, please share it with a colleague or a practice owner who could benefit from the conversation. Okay. Until next time, Kelly, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Peter. You too.
Bye-bye.